Somewhere in a remote and hidden invisible Egyptian pyramid, a mysterious figure, cloaked in a classically styled tuxedo and mask, appears next to a pyramid wall. The wall is enshrined with hieroglyphic art, teeming with cryptic messages that the figure seems to understand. Just then, he stretches out his arms where orbs of energy encircle each of his hands. The figure in question is called the Phantom Kurator. He is one of the most unique and mysterious heroes, a part of the superhero team called the Empyreal Force. His unique powers and abilities are achieved by manipulating multiple forms of art for the purposes of good. His countenance appears serious, as he appears to concentrate intensely on some of the symbols on the ancient wall. As he begins to concentrate, it is then that the curator begins to transport to another place. Quickly he re-emerges in his cryptic museum nestled within the Tower of Time, on the edge of reality. Inside of the museum is an incredible array of ancient artifacts and art. Flanking him on each of his sides are sarcophagi, or stone caskets, which carried the mummies of two ancient Egyptian Nubian pharaohs. Also present is an ancient object that seems to glow the most, a golden ankh, which once belonged to the ancient Egyptian deity Ptah. This ankh represented eternal life, the ability to protect one from harm, and the ability to reveal absolute truth. As the golden ankh intensifies its glow, the curator's eyes begin to glow with a similar color and intensity. It is at this moment that his eyes seem to resemble reflectors. But these reflective eyes would not reflect an actual image. Instead, they project an image within his mind. Now, reflected deeply within the corners of the curator's mind, he sees the faded image of an ancient pharaoh, holding the very same ankh in his own cryptic museum. The Egyptian king appears strong and proud, displaying unwavering confidence, power and leadership. The ankh in the vision is also glowing in the same way as within the museum that the Phantom Kurator currently stands in. Further unfolding within his mind is a vision of that same ankh on a staff. The curator solely possesses this staff now. It has evolved to have the power to reveal all facts and truth related to any work of art, regardless of whether it's a fine art portrait, a rare artifact or ancient relic. The curator's staff has the power to unlock the truth about the subject of that particular work of art. The staffed ankh, which the curator now owns and commands, also grants him the power to see over great distances, anywhere on the planet Earth. After the Phantom Curator's vision of the pharaoh subsides, he projects his own sight across thousands of miles into the United States Capitol Rotunda's showcase of art. An undetected visage of his face floats within a candescent, glowing bubble, where his eyes lock into the rotunda's surroundings. His projected phantom-like image scans all of the statues of early American presidents and senators, molded in stone and alabaster. The Phantom Kurator can't help but notice how the simplistic American statues pale in comparison to the elaborate, more grand and creative Egyptian artifacts, relics and hieroglyphic wall art he is used to. After all, he is an art curator, capable of discerning the grade, composition and value of all kinds of art. Curiously, he notices from the statues that none of them reflect the images of any of the foundational native black Americans that lived in the United States for centuries before Columbus's alleged arrival. His instincts tell him that more investigation would be needed to reconcile these questions. But now, projecting himself from such a long distance began to drain his strength, and he would need to pull his complete essence back to his museum in the Tower of Time in short order. Traveling such far distances often required the curator to look for shortcuts to travel back to his hidden museum within the Tower of Time. His powers even allowed him to travel across dimensions. In fact, he could travel across dimensions through mystical portals opened within paintings and portraits. And this is exactly what he does. He first changes his dimensional bodily composition from three-dimensional into two-dimensional, in order to lunge into the painting's landscape. After projecting himself within the artistic masterpiece, he travels across one of the bridged pathways flanked by two wide burning torches within the painting. His approach begins to work as he can see within his sight the Tower of Time. Meanwhile, the previous vision from the U.S. Capitol Rotunda of art completely fades away. After such a long trip across dimensions, he catapults from the abstract painting, successfully arriving back into his private museum. As he arrives, he positions himself right between two masterpiece works of art displayed via easels on the floor of his gallery. On his right side is a painting of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the world-changing American activist, Baptist minister and political philosopher who was one of the most pivotal leaders in the advancement of American civil rights for foundational Black Americans. On his left side is a portrait of Frederick Douglass, the legendary social reformer, abolitionist, orator and statesman. Both paintings seem to have an aura, reflecting the legendary essences of the icons they each represented. The purpose of traveling back here became more focused. It was for him to satisfy his curiosity and quest for critically unknown knowledge. The curator needed to know, why were there no statues of these two legends included within the Rotunda's Gallery of Art in the U.S. Capitol? But he would have to make a choice of which portrait to prioritize using his powers on. Everything in his instinct seemed to point to focusing on Dr. King's portrait first. The choice is made. The phantom curator decides that it will be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s portrait that would be mystically investigated first. The curator is aware of Dr. King's contributions to the United States and what his presence meant for native foundational Black Americans, long before European settlers ever arrived. But he is also perplexed about exactly what precipitated Dr. King's assassination, especially after making such significant progress with the advancement of civil rights. His powers would be needed, and he sensed that more facts would be required for him to fully understand. Similar to before, the staffed ink slowly begins to glow with a greenish energy, simultaneously glowing along with his eyes. The staff reaches its full output and the powers of the curator go into full effect. The mystical command of the ink begins to affect the image on Dr. King's portrait. As the curator speaks, he makes a statement and then asks a question. He says, "Make known what is not yet known or remembered." What is it that Dr. King sought as his ultimate goal? What happens next is astounding. The portrait begins to literally speak, reflecting a portion of the speech he made approximately 2 months before he was assassinated. First it becomes really quiet, and then Dr. King's voice is mystically channeled through the painting.
At the same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. Now, this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
It is clear in that moment that Dr. King was advocating for financial reparations for foundational native Black Americans, reparations not only for more than 465 years of slavery, but also for the catastrophic effects of evil Jim Crow policies. The phantom curator now understands that these policies were designed to prevent foundational Black Americans from ever participating in the benefits of the labor from their enslaved forefathers and foremothers. It also becomes evident in this moment that Dr. King was challenging the United States to provide monetary recompense for wrongs that had not been righted. So much stolen labor from millions of enslaved people had to be accounted for. This is the answer the phantom curator was looking for. Without speaking, he knows instinctively that the desire to not atone for massive ill-gotten gains set in motion the evil forces that plotted the demise of this great American. The curator battles simultaneous feelings of anger and hope, and thinks about ways to remedy this and share with others. Just then, the light within his gallery begins to fade as he goes into a somber solitude. Eventually other members of the Empyreal Force superhero team would soon begin to learn about his findings. But this would be a story for another day. The Empyreal Force is a trademark of Audacity Comics. Audiobook cover art is copyright of Todd Harbinger, originals care of Todd Harbinger, Chief Creative Officer. Stay tuned for more audiobooks on the Empyreal Force. You can find more great stories at audacitycomics.com. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure you subscribe, share, like and comment. The artwork displayed in our story and several others like it can be found and purchased at tharboronart.com.